Welcome everyone to Things Around 8. Dear friends, in this video we will talk about recent statements by NATO and other allies of Ukraine that want Kiev to have the freedom to attack, with Western weapons, Russian military targets inside Russia. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any news. In an interview published this Friday, May 24th, Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General of NATO, said once again that Ukraine's allies that supply weapons and ammunition, such as the United States, France, United Kingdom and Germany, must allow the Ukrainians to use these weapons and ammunition against Russian military targets inside Russia. In the interview, Secretary Stoltenberg said that countries need to lift this restriction urgently, a view shared by some other countries such as Poland, with its Foreign Minister, Radoslav Sikorsky, saying in a recent interview that Poland stands by what called Ukraine's right to attack Russian military targets inside Russia. But why do allies prohibit Ukrainians from using Western weapons against military targets inside Russia? And why are NATO and some other countries insisting that this restriction be lifted? When a country supplies weapons to another country to defend itself in a war, the aggressor can claim that that country is an active party in the conflict and that, therefore, it can also be attacked. Among the various concepts of neutrality, there is a common element that says that a country, in order to be neutral, cannot become directly or indirectly involved in a conflict, which means that it cannot supply weapons to either those who attack or those who defend. This was made very explicit in international conventions held between 1856 and 1907 in Paris and Raya, which also say that a neutral state cannot even allow the use of its territory or airspace by any of the parties involved in a conflict, with the neutral country including the right to use force to prevent either party from using its territory for military maneuvers. According to these conventions, a neutral state must keep its diplomatic channels open with all belligerents, but on a commercial level, it must cease the commercialization of raw materials or equipment seen as essential to the war effort. These conventions changed over the decades, especially during the Second World War. In that conflict that began in September 1939, the United States remained officially neutral until December 1941. But in this period of more than 2 years, Washington played a central role in material support for its allies, first to the United Kingdom, which was alone in the war between June 1940 and June 1941, and then also to the Soviet Union, when it was attacked by Germany in June 1941. Even though officially neutral, the United States sent millions of tons of weapons, ammunition and raw materials for these two allies of yours. Aid that, in the light of old conventions, would have been enough to overturn the neutrality status of the United States. But as Germany was not interested in the official entry of the United States into the war, Berlin pretended not to see, with the German High Command even issuing orders prohibiting its submarines from attacking North American ships in the Atlantic, even those clearly transporting weapons and ammunition to the United Kingdom and the Soviet Union. This is what happened in this first phase of the Second World War, with Germany recognizing the neutrality of the United States, even though it knew that the Americans were actively helping the British and the Soviets, as the Germans were not interested in the official entry of the United States into the conflict. This is exactly the same as what is happening now in Ukraine, with Russia. Even though they know that the Americans supply billions of dollars in weapons and ammunition to the Ukrainians, making a point of recognizing the United States as a neutral nation, as they are not interested in that country's official entry into the war. But the United States and Ukraine's other arms-supplying allies, such as the United Kingdom, Germany and France, are also zealous. And for this reason, in order not to give Russia any reason to declare them as an integral and active part of the conflict, they banned the Ukrainians from using within Russia the weapons they provide in the multiple military aid packages. Under these restrictions, weapons such as HIMARS and the Franco-British Storm Shadow Scalp missile can only be used against Russian military targets within Ukrainian territory under Russian military occupation. According to Ukraine, NATO and some other countries, this is giving Putin a huge tactical advantage, with the biggest example of this being the offensive launched against Kharkiv on May 10 this year, with President Zelensky having recently said that if it were not for this restriction imposed by the United States and other allies, Ukraine could now be targeting large concentrations of Russian troops, weapons and ammunition in the Russian Belgorod Oblast, Attacks that would obviously greatly affect the operational capacity of the Russian invasion forces in the north of Kharkiv. When Ukraine wants to strike targets inside Russia, it can only use weapons designed and produced inside Ukraine, as is the case with long-range drones that frequently damage important Russian refineries. With Vladimir Putin desperately seeking tactical alternatives to break the relative stagnation of the main combat front, including, as I mentioned, the opening of new combat fronts and attacks from within Russian territory, Ukraine, and now NATO, has been increasingly insistent that these restrictions be overturned, which would allow Ukraine to attack Russian units inside Russia and not wait for them to enter its territory so that only then can they be attacked. I would like to know what your opinion is on the restrictions that the USA imposed on Ukraine? And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any news.